Yeah, you too.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Breaking Through the Disruption webinar series, Minnesota Real Estate Journal, RE Journals. First and foremost, this is about our 35th webinar that we've hosted in the last 60 days or so, and we couldn't be hosting any of these webinars without our sponsors. So a special thank you to MinCrew, BOMA Greater Minneapolis, WSB, SIOR, PrimeX, CCIM. Thank you to our sponsors. Also, our company is bigger now than just Minnesota Real Estate Journal. We also have Illinois Real Estate Journal, Chicago Industrial Properties, Midwest Real Estate News, and Red News, which is based out of Texas. For any individual in the that are on our webinar today, today's webinar has been approved for 1 hour of real estate continuing education credits by the Minnesota Department of Commerce today. So in order to get those credits, you need to timestamp yourself in, which most people are doing. But then we're asking people to also put their names and their license number in the right-hand chat box. We'll also be sending you out 2 additional questions, random questions today during the today's webinar. And those questions can be answered on the right-hand side. And then also at the very end of the program at 11 o'clock, you're going to want to do the same thing that you're doing this morning and time stamping yourself out. All right, so here we go. If you do happen to have any connection issues, you're going to see above your screen, if you're on your laptop or your computer, a red reconnect button. All you have to do is hit reconnect. If you're having any other issues, just go ahead and try a different browser. And the ideal browser is Google Chrome. Right now, my signal is showing 5 lines. That means our servers are running hot.
All right.
All right, so here we go. So, and then also this webinar, in addition to all of our other webinars, you'll be able to find at rejournals.com /videos, rejournals.com /videos. All right, here we go. Today's webinar, Commercial Developer Leadership Webinar 2020. All right. Let me pull up the slides for our presenters. All right, so our first presenter is Bill Catter, CEO of United Properties. Our second panelist is Matt Roundhorse, Executive Vice President of the Opus Group. Third panelist is Blake Hastings, CEO of Opidin. Fourth panelist is Ann Behrentz. Ann, did I muster it too bad?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
CEO of Doran Companies. And our final presenter is Mike Ryan, who is just jumping on the webinar. He was having a little bit of technical problems. President of Ryan Companies. All right, gentlemen. So here we go. I thought kind of the appropriate way to start this webinar is obviously with the.
Hey, Jeff, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. Perfect timing.
Thanks, Brian.
Your timing's perfect. We just went through the introductions. So obviously, all of you are located and based here in Minnesota, and we have people from all over the country. How are your companies handling the riots, the recent riots and stuff, and how have they impacted your individual companies based here in Minneapolis? And have they impacted any of your properties outside this market? So, Bill, do you want to start it out?
I can. I'll just say I'm sure everyone feels the same way. It's been a very difficult and tragic week here last week in Minneapolis. And I would say physically we are on the good side. We have not had damage to really any of our properties, whether in Minneapolis, Denver. But I'd say emotionally a very difficult time for our employees and some of our clients. And our employees are spending a lot of time. We have created a forum internally for people to start many types of conversations. I'm sure everybody is doing this and trying to figure out how we can help create teams in the Twin Cities and our other markets for the better. So that is how we're currently operating.
I think it's me. I'm having some audio. So from our standpoint, I think the world has changed in our community significantly in the last, week and a half. And so I think a starting point has been taking care of our employees and the people, at Doran. And we have employees, some people who, live in neighborhoods that are affected or have had some direct impacts. And I think from an asset standpoint, we've been lucky in that we haven't had any damage. But there were definitely some tense moments, I think, for really everyone in this community. And this is the place, personally, I grew up in Minneapolis, and this is a community that I love, and I think there's just this deep feeling of pride for the city. So it's just a tough time. There's also so much positivity kind of surrounding this that I think we're all seeing, and some really necessary things that are happening. And I think a very real commitment to the level and on a level across the board of people raising their hand and saying, "How can I do this? How can I be part of the solution and the building and the future of our city?"
All right, Mike.
I'd say similar comments. I mean, our employees, first and foremost, no one's injured. People are all relatively safe, but we got a big team here and people that live and work right at ground zero of all these sites. I learned a hell of a lot about private security and hiring them over the weekend, and continue to do that. That's been an unbelievable journey. I think our give back and trying to get out there to clean up and be part of that has been complicated. How do you do that in the face of putting people at risk? So we've been part of boarding up, I would say, probably 30 buildings in the Twin Cities. We helped clean out the Target Lake Street on Sunday. We're continuing to do that work. We own the Midtown Exchange property where the Global Market is. That got broken into every night. The security got the vandals out, so it was not looted, fortunately. We own the Family Dollar next door that burnt to the ground. We built the Cristo Rey High School right in the Lake Street Midtown area. They got their front windows broken in. And then we've got a large property in Uptown that we turned over on Monday this week. We moved the first 3 residents into, and we're still under construction with the second half of it. So we spent the weekend securing that. And I mean, it was as dicey as neighbors pulling people off the building scaffolding at gunpoint. And it was just wild. So I would say we're all kind of reeling, helping where we can. But it's more triage at this point, and the real healing and kind of proaction is yet to come for us.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments before me. I think safety first is a core value at Opus. And as we went into Thursday and Friday and through the weekend, talked a lot about how we keep our employees safe, the residents and our assets safe, and try to be respectful of what was happening in a larger community. We did suffer damage at our downtown multifamily asset with some broken windows and some pretty significant scenes happening downtown on Thursday night, and that was hard to watch and hard for our residents. We also closed a number of construction sites Friday and then over the weekend, and then again early part of this week, just they were not in a safe position. All of us at Opus, much like what was said before me, are looking for opportunities to be a part of a solution, part of a conversation, and part of immediate cleanup, but then part of a larger conversation of what are we doing, how are we looking at change, how are we taking this really tough time as a learning opportunity and an opportunity to grow as a community. We have not had damage in any other cities, but we have taken precautions at those buildings. Much like we heard from Mike, Friday was a hard, busy day as we looked to secure buildings, bring security in. It was a challenging day, and one day that I think none of us really could have imagined happening after what was going on Thursday and leading into the weekend. So difficult times.
Blake.
Yeah, a lot has already been said. today, but I would say for me personally in our company, it started on Thursday when a good friend of mine lost their building, the place of work, the Seven Sigma building, and that kind of kicked it just into a realization what was going on and really brought a sadness. So I think everyone on this, everyone. But we had a building on Hiawatha, multifamily building where we had two buildings next to it burned down. I, like Mike, coordinated private security on Friday and never knew and never thought we would fly people in to secure our buildings. I don't know if it was overkill or not, but I feel that it kept residents safe, which Matt said is the most important thing. But I do think that as a real estate community, it's going to be important for us not to just worry about it today, but worry about it in the years coming and push our influence to make change. Not today, but 6 months, a year, 2, 5 years down the road, especially in that area, because that community is very damaged. It's very sad.
Jeff, I just want to add one thing I meant to say. I want to give, we are not a contractor like some folks on this call that are also developers. And I want to acknowledge the courage of the people who continue to run our job sites and work in construction in and around downtown. They have showed up starting with COVID and worked all the way through with very little time off during the protests and the tragic events of the last couple of weeks. And those people deserve special recognition and credit. Hats off to the contractors on this call and the folks that are not on this call, but in that business, showing up and running these sites. It's been a hell of a courageous thing to see happen.
It's a great point, Bill, and I'm with you on that. In the same camp you are.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate your thoughts on this. You guys are leaders in the commercial real estate community here in Minneapolis, and what you're seeing and what you guys are doing means a lot to us at Minnesota Real Estate Journal, and I know the commercial real estate community and our community in general. Before we kind of jump into the next question, Bill, could you do me a favor? Move closer to your computer so that we can hear you better, a lot closer, really close like we are. And then, yeah, then we can hear you nice and good. And then Blake just a smidge closer as well too. So kind of the plan was today to obviously talk about how we are dealing with how our respective companies are dealing with the COVID pandemic and stuff like that. And obviously this, these riots and stuff, came out of nowhere. So we thought it would be really important to touch on it. So thank you again. So kind of moving on to our next question is, the state of Minnesota has deemed construction as an essential business. Could you tell us what you guys are currently what your current job sites look like for your companies, and how are you guys shifting those jobs or changing things that you're doing on your job sites to comply with state laws? Matt, do you want to start out this time?
Sure. Yeah, happy to kick off. We have a number of active construction sites, obviously, around the country within the Opus footprint. We continue to operate all of those sites at this time. We have had a couple of our sites in different locations, instances where we were closed for a short period of time, went through an industrial cleaning process after we had confirmed positives on site. But generally, and as of today, all sites are open and operating. Following CDC guidelines for how we operate those sites, which includes face coverings in the event you're on a site where physical distancing cannot be guaranteed. And we continue to try to bring forth the best cleaning options that are on the site. It really evolves each week as we learn more. We find better guidelines, we find better operating procedures, and continue to communicate that out with our field staff. As Bill shared, we're super appreciative and grateful for our teams out there in the field who have effectively worked right through the pandemic, where I'm sitting at home and our teams are out on site. And we're, as an organization, very grateful for them continuing to show up and move forward what is an essential part of our economy to bring buildings to complete buildings and open them for residents, open them for industrial users, office users. So we're operating. We are excited to actually kick off a few new buildings here in the coming weeks in this market here in Minneapolis. And we're really, I'm sure some others can touch on as well. We're happy to see that most of the backlogs and delays that were associated with supply chain in COVID seem to be clearing themselves up as our country starts to open. But I'll let others maybe expand on that a little bit.
Mike, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. I think Matt said much of what we're experiencing, there's heavy screening when you enter the job sites in the morning. Some of those include temperature checks, some don't. But for sure, a questionnaire: who have you been with? How do you feel? Did you take your own temp? That sort of thing. We're asking the field team members to do a ton. I worked this weekend for the first time in a long time with the tool belt on, and it is a pain in the ass, pardon my language, to work with a face mask and glasses on all day. It's not how it's meant to be done, and we're asking a lot of those team members. That said, the first 4 weeks felt like they felt like chaos. We were layering new policies, strategies, tactics, and changing them every other day. So it was really tough for the first 4 weeks. I'm shocked. The last 4, the positivity on the job sites, I think after the dust kind of settled, people realized, wow, we are so fortunate to be an essential service. We didn't get the carpet pulled out from us. We've got a new curveball, but the teams are resilient, and they're really I'm not just saying this. The attitude on most of the job sites is positive. Now, the one thing I've learned is that every job site is different. Some will tell me they're operating better because of it. They've got total, autonomy over the site, limited people. Other jobs, you just can't socially distance in them. And so it's really kind of a story of multiple, the difference between each job. I'll give you a good example. Remodeling targets used to be probably the safest work we did. Suddenly, you're in a live store environment with people that are unmasked. You have no control over who they are. That's shifted completely on us. And so there's just a lot of, I think, different components right now that are different and unique per site. I'll give one good story to end. We've got a superintendent who has been in the field for the last 7 weeks, and he's been home for the last 2, in between jobs, kind of doing the schedule, getting prepared. He nominated the entire office staff for MVP. His wife's a teacher. He's got the kids at home. He's like, this is nuts. I don't know how you guys are working from home. I want back on a job site immediately. So we're trying to be very conscious of, we've got a bifurcated culture right now, and we don't like that. And just trying not to reinforce kind of some of the natural barriers between those that work on a job site and in an office.
All right. Anyone else?
I think, Ann would probably be, because Bill and I are in the ballpark of where we're going to rely on the likes of Matt, Ann, and Mike and our GC partners, and make sure they're following guidelines.
Yeah, I think, so I everything that Mike and Matt said is true. I think that talk about a challenge. These guys in the field are used to solving problems right in front of them. But I mean, this was a huge challenge, and a really heavy lift at the beginning to say, okay, no matter where you're at as far as construction, you guys have to implement this entirely new process for how we're going to screen people and how we're going to track people. And, by the way, if you're toward the end of a project where you typically, have kind of all over the building, we want you to limit people to this area only. And, they rose to the occasion, and actually were then the ones to bring new ideas. We've been evolving this as well. Getting temperature checks, things seem like a good idea, and then you implement it, and it's like, well, it's just not really working. They're not that active. Look outside, it's cold, it's hot, whatever. So, I mean, I think that what's happened is that as we've settled into this new normal, we've all figured out how we're going to screen in a way that's effective. It really does depend on job by job and the stage of as well. And then I think the other big challenge, and guidelines are changing and evolving as we learn more about what we're dealing with. That's sort of the uncertainty, is we're still uncertain of what this virus is going to do and how to best combat it. So the Minnesota Department of Health and the CDC guidelines are not totally consistent, and that's created some confusion and disagreement between the oceans vendors and our state outside. I think that the attitude, though, has been positive. And, we're having subs reach out to us to thank us for the efforts that we're making that really make their lives a lot more difficult. So I think it's just that positivity that our stakeholders that's been able to really have minimal schedule impact on.
All right, and you were kind of breaking up a little bit on your audio, so just make sure you get nice and close and stuff for next questions. I'm not sure how many bars you're seeing on the right-hand side, but this might be a good segue into our next topic, but we're going to do our first CE question of today. And my first CE question, you can answer that on the right-hand side there, is where does everybody anticipate construction pricing to be by the end of the year? Is it going down? And if it's going down, by what percentage? And if it's going up, by what percentage? Please answer that on the right-hand side if you're looking for real estate CE. So that brings us to construction pricing. Mike, do you want to answer that question from your perspective to start out with?
You're the first person to ask me about pricing in the last 10 weeks. So every developer at Ryan is assuming a 10% drop in pricing. I think every construction professional is hoping they can maintain flatness. And so to not be cute about it, we are seeing some pockets of softening, but in general, it's still pretty darn early to tell what the real impact is and what kind of special conditions we've got to address with the schedule implications and the workforce implications of COVID. So those two are working in opposite directions. I'd say maybe the thing that gives me some confidence that it will come down, there's some pockets around the country where we're noticing significant price decrease. I'll give you one is the Orlando area. More than half that market supports Disney and the whole, tourism industry around it. And they're sucking wind right now. Disney has shut down any kind of future projects, at least for the moment. And so there's an example where you get some good cushioning, but you're working in New Jersey where they have much higher workforce issues because the COVID is so much more impactful. Pricing we're seeing is up in those markets. So it's really different from market to market, and I expect that to continue for a while.
Does anyone else want to make any comments on construction pricing?
I think it's Mike said it well. It's kind of a room divided. We're hoping that the contractors, Bill and I, are just going to say that construction costs are plummeting. I would say our vantage point, we look at it as a good time to buy a project right now and schedule a project. As Mike said, really dependent on market. An example would be we just got 3 bids back on a large senior housing deal in California, and it was, from our developers, as Mike knows, they usually pro forma things a little bit light, and it actually came in right around our numbers, especially in a volatile construction pricing market like California. The 3 bids were exactly consistent. And I believe, and the contractors might disagree or agree, I think it's an opportunity where there's going to be the contractors on the phone can pick the best subs because they're going to have, there's going to be less potential work. So we're going to be able to get the contractors will be able to get the best stuff to be more efficient on those jobs than they might have been stretched 12 months ago or 6 months ago or 3 months ago.
Would anyone like to comment on outlook for labor and cost of labor going forward?
Jeff, I don't know if I'll take that exact question, but I will just add to the conversation about cost. I think some of us or all of us are probably also concerned about just delivery of materials. If you're like on our downtown Gateway project, we had glass coming from Canada, and that at first gave us a lot of heartburn. Would we have a delay over construction in getting materials into the country? It turns out that we're going to be fine there, but I think if you're building anything of significance and it's in process, you also are concerned about delivery and materials that may be coming in from outside the market or country. So that's something to keep your eye on here. And I think as this country continues to think about reorganizing its supply chain, I think we'll see some of that. I think that will be a continued area of focus. Can you get the materials? locally here, and will there be a price increase by not having competitive pricing available from outside the United States? So those are things to watch that might moderate, but I do think the cost of labor in the short term on construction will likely come down.
All right. So how about we kind of switch topics a little bit? I want to do kind of the Hollywood Squares approach. I want to get everybody's comment on this. How are your current portfolios weathering the storm right now?
Sure, I can jump in. I think we've got assets across our footprint, and we're monitoring as rents come in on existing student housing, multifamily, industrial, and office space. And we've been really encouraged. I think we have found that almost no change to May rent receipts over looking back through March and even February. So on the multifamily side, it's been really good. Student has also remained maybe even stronger than we expected, with only a 3 to 4% decrease in rent receipts in that space. And I think it's a little bit of a function of being a developer playing in new products. You're at the top end, you're in the Class A product type, and that has been holding up from what we've seen across the country. We've also looked, Midwest seems to be holding up really well compared to other parts of our country, whether to with regard to rent receipts. So we're pleased and encouraged with what we've seen.
I'll kick in. I would say that from our standpoint, and most of our segments, it has really been unchanged. But I would say that, retail's been impacted. In April and May, I would guesstimate we were probably around 50% in rent receipts. Good news in June, that's up to about 75%. But I'm concerned about the retail space in general, just restaurants or anything, even it's not at full capacity, it's going to be hard. So there's going to be some adjustments there, but it's trending, I would say, obviously in a better direction than it was in April, May.
For us, I would say April, May, we're in that 90% range of collections. As Blake said, retail tends to be a difficult area right now. We have a lot of grocery anchored centers, and the smaller retailers, the haircut, the nail salons who can't open, really don't have any revenue to pay the rent. So our model there has been not to put those tenants out of business. We don't want to be the reason they fail, and we're hopeful that at some point here they'll start to recover. I do think it's a fair point that if you have vacancy in your portfolio, it's been much harder to get prospects attracted to that vacancy in the commercial side. Senior housing, we have a substantial portfolio, including properties under development, and that also has been a challenge to show vacant units to get people in. You can't really tour the community; you have to do a virtual tour, and then if you pass a health test, you can move in. And let's be honest, in the senior business, if you have an adult parent that wants to go into the community, you may be putting them in there and not be able to physically be with them again for some time. So that's been a challenge.
Yeah, for us, same. Our multifamily at the beginning was an area that we were concerned about, and we've seen rent collections right where they've been historically. And, so we're very pleased with that. Commercial, we're experiencing the same issues that everyone else that has commercial portfolio is. I think the thing that also has been a big positive for us is that leasing built new buildings and the lease-up activity has remained strong. There was a period there where it kind of dropped off a cliff right at the beginning of this, but people have adjusted to looking at units virtually, at least in the kind of luxury multifamily space, and we've been able to continue down the right path on that front too. So multifamily is the bright spot from our perspective.
I'll be quick. For us, the retail has been pretty challenging. Everyone said that. I think with the exception of grocery stores, they've fared very well through this. No surprise. I think office, we've collected most of our rent on our office space, which I think is a surprise to us. I think the PPE rules around that helped a bit, but we have noticed credit ratings starting to slip on some of the tenants that we'd consider like blue chip tenants. So as their credit rating starts to adjust, the value of the asset changes. Senior living's been surprising for us. We've had successful lease up. We've got a large portfolio. of senior, probably 20 projects around the country, and it's gone well. But I think we're knocking on wood because that just doesn't seem like that's going to continue. Multifamily's been good. From our national perspective, Minnesota is the top rent collector. That's also what we're hearing from our national partners, that of all their states, Minnesota is the bell ringer in terms of percentage rent collected. So that's kind of where we're at. And we've even sold some condo units through COVID, which is, kind of the ultimate test in my mind of, is there a market still out there for real estate, and are people still going forward with those kind of decisions? So
it helps if I turn on my microphone. All right, so all right, let's segue to what are your banks telling you? What are your investors telling you? What are your other lending institutions telling you today? What do they want to do? Are they sitting on the sidelines? Are they moving forward? Give us a quick update. Your capital markets update.
It's interesting. Mike and I moderated a panel not too long ago with bankers, and they all kind of said we were open for business with a bit of an asterisk by it for their good customers. But I would say it's really dependent on product type right now. Retail is going to get scrutinized. Hotels are going to get scrutinized. But that being said, we just financed 2 retail build-to-suits, in the past 30 days. And so senior housing, we just got completed our capital stack for a Minnesota project, as well as one in California. All started after the COVID situation. Multifamily, same deal. So I think there's going to be more scrutiny around the deals, but there is still opportunity to finance and find equity for development. But there's a lot more scrutiny.
Yeah, and I think lenders what we're seeing is, especially the larger lenders, they're getting more conservative, significantly more conservative on bigger projects. And but on the flip side, we have a smaller project that we're going to start construction on this summer, and we had very competitive terms from smaller lenders. So I think that there's opportunity here, especially on deals that don't require either a large lender or a lot of. From an equity standpoint, I think there's a family office and non-institutional players that are very much excited about developing, getting things in the ground now and not looking to pause. And then I think on the institutional side, there's a bit of a, so I think that the sort of pause, wait and see mentality is there, but it's not across the board, and it's not with every project. I think it's not it's a challenge, but it's not insurmountable.
Not a lot to add. We're seeing the same thing. Our regional banks, our regional lenders are open for business. We are closing loans on a variety of different project types, including speculative industrial, with still really solid terms. And those are things that have changed in the last 30 days. So we are seeing thawing in the capital markets. We're seeing improvement. We're very encouraged by what we're seeing there. As Ann mentioned, the largest of lenders still seem to be a bit on the sideline. We've got institutional equity investors for build-to-suit projects that are moving forward and moving towards closing later this summer. So, but it needs to be the right credit, and it needs to be really a buttoned-up, well-done deal. More of our speculative projects or institutional folks are moving a little bit slower. They're kind of taking a little bit of let somebody else go first. So we're on a similar path. There is, for really large projects that need complicated capital stack, those projects are moving a little bit slower right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say the banking side, I won't get too deep there. We have a great set of banks. We think that they are continuing to be in business for us, and really no concerns on our side on how the banks will work with us. That said, we're not, we've launched a couple of projects here, a build-to-suit locally. working on some things that will break ground again this fall, but we're hearing very good things. I'll take the capital market side of this, which is we've also been a seller in the first quarter, and then about a week ago we sold 3 industrial buildings in Minneapolis and in Denver. And I don't have experience outside of industrial selling in the last 2 quarters, but on the industrial, it's record pricing. I think that is an example of an asset class that is trading above or at COVID levels, pre-COVID levels, just because of the implied security of the industrial real estate. We sold a large asset in Denver a week ago at a 4.1 cap rate. It was a long-term lease with a credit tenant, but that surprised us how strong it was. So I believe capital markets for high-quality assets are still functional, at least in the industrial space.
I'd agree with everything that's been said. A couple things that we're seeing is exactly what was referenced relative to the big banks being somewhat sidelined. We've seen spreads off as much as 100 basis points from them. The regional banks are stepping in, and sometimes we're seeing better rates than we anticipated. So I think the difference between the different quotes we're getting in terms are substantially different than they were 3 months ago, but we're still able to find good rates. We've closed probably 8 to 10 new development deals since COVID, and all of those required a customer equity and debt coming together. So the markets are open, but they're without a doubt different. I think the sale of assets, with the exception of industrial, we have seen price compression there. And so if you have the ability to wait on some of those sales, that's the attitude we're taking. I think the equity side of it, we are so fortunate in the U.S. There is a tremendous waiting list of equity for projects. It's just at what terms, but they want to invest in U.S. real estate, and I don't see that changing. I think the non-traditional lenders, like the mezz lenders or maybe some private equity lending, is all over the place. They're pretty upside down, and that's getting transformed. And then we've seen a pattern of loan to value or loan to cost coming down significantly, trying to be in the 60%. 66, I think, is kind of the magic number. And so between there and 75% is where we're seeing a lot of those quotes.
All right. So why don't we do this? We're going to segue into the next topic. But as we do, this will be a nice little segue again. All right. So we have Bill with United Properties. We have Ann with Dorn Companies. We have Blake with Oppidan. We have Matt with Opus. And we have Mike with Ryan Companies. Who's going to be the first one of these 5 to announce the next major development in the Twin Cities? Everybody make their pick on the right-hand side. Yeah. All right. So that brings me to how has COVID-19 changed the way that you're going to be evaluating projects moving forward? Bill, do you want to start her out?
That's $1 million question. We are not in a hurry to start projects unless we feel clearly that we can create value. Development's all about value creation for us, and I think it's not as clear that building spec space, commercial spec space right now, you can create value. So I think that's just the name of the game right now. I think office rents are going to soften here in the Twin Cities in particular. I think Denver office market is okay. We did start and open up an office in Austin, Texas in April. Talk about a challenging time to open up an office, but we've got that going. I'm actually heading down there next week, and I would say our first, some of our major moves will be in Austin, Texas. We think that city will be among the leaders in coming out of COVID. But back to Minneapolis, we are working on a number of potential build-to-suits in and around downtown and the suburbs. We will see if those come together. We started an industrial build-to-suit in Inver Heights this last week, and we are planning on an industrial building in Brooklyn Park in the next month. So we will certainly keep going. We have a couple of senior projects, actually a fairly large senior development pipeline. We can talk about that more in the Twin Cities that is ahead of us in the next 4 or 5 months. So that's kind of the plan.
I think you said my name.
Yes, I did
All right.
unmute myself. Yes.
I think I think continuing to watch the rents is really going to be key for all of us here, and the fact that we're all seeing, from a multifamily standpoint, pretty strong rent collections is going to continue to drive that aspect of this business through COVID and beyond. I think that this is such a unique challenge that we're dealing with, because it's not like you're looking at some type of crack in the foundation of our industry or our business, or big questions swirling around kind of the fundamental assumptions that we're making. It's low cost, it's an outside force, and there's certainty. There's not certainty as to when it's going to end, but we do know. I mean, assuming that we can get there with a vaccine, that there will be a point where we're able to pass that. And so I think that because of the really unique challenges that this particular issue presents, we're continuing, and because we're always looking at things on a long-term basis and driving long-term value. As long as rents continue to be maintained, I think we're going to see projects that are paused now are likely, I think, paused. I don't think they're done. It's not. You're not hearing people just saying, we're cutting everything, we're walking. People are pausing, and I think that's a positive sign. So I think we'll get through it. And I think that we'll probably pick up where we left off as volume goes in 2020.
From our standpoint, I mean, I think for everyone on this phone, at least I can say it's hard to say, because when this started in March, I think, at least for myself, and I think a lot of people thought, okay, this is going to be 30 days, and then 30 turned into 60, 60 turned into 90, 90 turned into where we are today, 100 something. Where does that end? Because there's no doubt there's going to be some economical challenges with that. I mean, it's just simple economics. But I would say for us, we haven't hit the pause button and said no more. I mean, we're looking at everything in more detail with a longer term view. Bill, like you, we opened an office in Raleigh, North Carolina in January. Well, but we believe in that market long term. We have an office in San Jose, California. We believe in that, and then we believe in Minneapolis. Frankly, there was a Forbes article in Minneapolis, one of the top 5 cities to come out of this based on our local economy. So, we're looking at it as, 60 days down the road, but looking at these asset classes, especially senior and multifamily, those are the right classes to be in 2-3 years. When a lot of these projects will deliver.
I think I would echo that. I think as we look at post-COVID, we still see strength in the student world. We see a lot of strength there in a category that hasn't been talked about yet, and that occupancies and densities within units are going to go down, which is going to require more space. If we go to single occupancy on campus and all of those on-campus apartments, that's going to drive demand off campus as well. Opus has always been and continues to be really active in the industrial, both speculative and build-to-suit markets, and we think we're really well positioned to see strength on the way out of COVID, and seeing a lot of leasing and really good quality speculative positions coming to the market there. I think we've got, as Bill mentioned, and a couple others, there's some senior projects that are in development. And I think that, I'm optimistic, but we're taking a really good look to see where's capital, where's debt going to come on those buildings. And does the metrics of demand change? We're still a little ways out from the aging of that, large generation moving into senior space. And is that wave of seniors, is that going to be affected by what's particularly happening in our long-term care facilities here in the state of Minnesota? So more to come on that, and we're watching it closely.
Hey, Matt, do you want to maybe comment? Is there other things that we can do kind of from a design standpoint or construction standpoint, obviously for these senior housing facilities that have been impacted dramatically by this COVID-19? Or does anybody else have any thoughts on that as well, too?
I think from a senior living facility, there's some things that are happening now about even materials that are resistant to viruses and bacteria that are coming into play that are helping our operators doing some locations of different things in the building. So it's easier to bring food and bring deliveries into the building in a place where they can be secured, decontaminated. There are design things that will change with how the buildings are built and how they're designed and what the layouts look like to make them a safer environment for our residents. It's evolving quickly, and I know there's more, and maybe some other folks in the panel can comment on it, but it is something that we're all paying attention to.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add on the senior side is, yeah, there'll be, I'm sure, some design changes coming out of this, but the facilities that have redundancy, 2 kitchens, isolation areas, if you have memory care in the unit, in the building already, it sure helps to have 2 zones that you can kind of isolate people, the healthy patients and the unhealthy. And I think operating costs of senior is where we're most concerned. They're going to be tough to staff. That's where most of the we all have focused on the healthcare industry as being really toughly, has a huge challenge with COVID, and it does. But the senior care facilities are, that is a tough environment to manage in right now and to work in. And so I think we'll see some changes there. To your earlier question, I'd say the vertically mixed use stuff is going to be hard to go forward with in the near term. Anything that relies on government bonds is going to be delayed, in my opinion. Healthcare is going to have a short-term kind of delay. They're purely focused on COVID right now. Some of them are being offensive, but most are being defensive. And the multi-tenant office, particular spec, I think that's going to take a slowdown. I think for us, the multifamily, the industrial, the senior, and the build-to-suit worlds, those are all continuing forward, just with a little extra layer of scrutiny. And then I think where this goes long-term really depends on the COVID path. There is a substantial resurgence. If a vaccine isn't available for 24 months, if one never comes, I think that's what's going to have the longer-term impacts on real estate. If we, breeze through this and it actually doesn't have a resurgence in the fall, boy, that'll mean really good things for real estate. So maybe just to wrap this one up, we've had surprisingly a couple of customers really hit the gas pedal and see this as an opportunity. And we've had, probably an equal number hit the brakes and just say no more. We've got to focus on the task at hand.
All right. Anyone else? Any other comments there? Otherwise, one of my final questions is, most of you have offices in other parts of the country. What countries are you most bullish on in the United States right now? Bill, do you want to start it out?
Sure. We're in Minneapolis, Denver, and now Austin. And our strategy to go to Austin was to layer on a higher growth market where there's just, I would say, Austin and Texas in general have done a great job of recruiting companies in. They've got an attractive regulatory environment, a very attractive young labor force. Employers have noticed that and have started to accelerate their building new facilities in that Austin market in particular, but Houston, Dallas have done great. So I do think Austin will continue to outperform. I think Denver also will do very well. Minneapolis has been a very consistent performer for us. We've not done much multifamily in Minnesota. But we are thinking we are going to consider affordable, not only just in response to what's going on here, but also just in general to complement our senior business. We're going to take a very hard look at getting into affordable for senior as an add-on to providing an overall solution for seniors. So I'd say product types, cities are Austin, Denver, Minneapolis. We'll still do business in all of them, in all of our core business product types. But Austin will get a disproportionate share of capital from us for certain, just to grow it, but also because we think it'll have the fastest growth curve coming out of COVID.
I think you said Blake there.
Blake, yeah, Blake.
I think we'll all kind of be homers on this a bit, but very similar to Bill. We layered on an office in Raleigh to consistency in Minneapolis to higher growth in Raleigh. we look at our office in San Jose as a great opportunity with technology, housing needs. And it's very challenging to get deals done there. So when you do, you lack the competition. So it takes a long time. In North Carolina, obviously the technology, the education down there, and then really the life sciences, that's growing out of the COVID is really creating some activity down there. And then Minneapolis is, I think everyone on this phone call is pure betting on the continued consistency of Minneapolis.
Yeah, for us, we've got offices in Seattle, San Diego, Phoenix, Austin, Dallas, Kansas City, 3 in Iowa, Tampa, Atlanta, Chicago, Milwaukee, and here. And I would say of those, all the markets are faring pretty consistently and well. None of them are really sucking wind. We don't anticipate Minnesota, and even in good times, to be a high growth market for us. It's just a steady market that's really stable. I would say Atlanta, the entire Southeast, including Florida and Texas, are kind of the 3 that we feel like have the most resiliency and will have the most momentum coming out of this, primarily due to low tax and high population growth.
I think as we look across our platform, really we see growth depending on what product type you look at. We have offices in Chicago, Indy, Kansas City, St. Louis, Des Moines, Denver, Phoenix, and Austin. And as you look at the Indy, Chicago offices, you see really strong demand for industrial. And then you look down in Phoenix, and it's a little bit different. We're doing the industrial, but also multifamily in Phoenix and Denver, senior living. And then Minnesota, looking across this panel, great set of competitors. It's going to be steady, but it is a competitive environment in this market. So we still see continued projects here, and we look to continue to grow on what we've done here in this market for a long time, but don't see massive growth here, just continued steady effort.
Yeah, and for us, we're here and we're in Denver, and our focus is on those 2 markets right now, and we feel good about opportunities in both places. And so I think from our standpoint, staying focused in the markets that we know for today is through the end of this year.
All right, excellent. So we have about, about 5-6 minutes left. If there's any questions from anyone that's watching, please put one off to the side. Otherwise, I want to give everybody, as people do that, give everyone a chance. Once again, we're going to do this Hollywood Squares. Give everyone a chance for any final last-minute thoughts or comments they want to give, or something that maybe you wanted to share with the audience today. So why don't we just start with Ann, who started us or finished us off last time?
Wow, that's a pretty open-ended question.
I did. I wanted one out.
No, I think so. I was just thinking about Matt's comment about this great group of competitors, and there's so much talent in this market. And that Forbes article, one of the things that was discussed was just the diversity of corporate talent and industries that we're in as a community, and that helps to drive our development work too. And so, as we look to figure out where we go as a community from here, and how we process and deal with the George Floyd murder in an authentic way, to really effectuate real change, I think this is a group that's poised to do that from a creative development standpoint. So proud to be part of this crew.
Yeah, I would say along those lines with COVID and then the recent George Floyd challenges, it's really been fun with all these competitors on the phone, but friends as well, helping each other out in the COVID. What are we doing? How are we going to get through this? And recently, and I really think it's important for the real estate community in general around the George Floyd issues and the challenges that we face in Minneapolis, that we don't just donate, that we really double down. And as an industry, we have great people as to what can we do to really help that out, mentoring or whatever it may be, helping that community out. Not today, excuse me, but in 6 months or a year. And I don't know the answer, but I would love to work with these leaders on the phone. But I think that's very.
I'll jump in. This is a more broad statement. I really think that when I talk to all of our employees and our clients and all of the brokers and people we do business with, the contractors, we really miss being able to get together and the energy of interaction together. It's a huge loss. I do think, and I would not underestimate that the long-term people want to get back together to collaborate, and we will get there. And we're in the business of creating spaces and places to live and collaborate, and that trend will play back out. I think we have had a short-term, obvious, very severe pullback. It's very hard to work from home every day and adjust to not being able to interact with people in the office and those casual conversations. But hang in there, we'll get there. And don't underestimate long-term demand for space in all of our sectors. I would not underestimate the U.S. economy rebounding. Interest rates are at all-time lows. As costs reset, we will see, I think, demand. And I would not underestimate the American spirit. People, whatever side of life you're on, will pull together and we'll come out of this. And I'm looking forward to working with the leaders on this call and in our industry to find better ways to collaborate and pull out of this. I am excited about the back end of this. It's been a tough one, but we're going to come out of this, and I think we're going to have fun, and we're going to do some great things.
I think it might go off of what Bill shared and say, even watching the names scroll of our attendee list here, see so many friends and colleagues we haven't had the opportunity to work with recently is encouraging, and feeling that sense of connection again. And make sure you're reaching out to folks you haven't talked to in a while. Check in with the folks. That's how we're going to get this thing going again. We're going to do it through networking. We're going to do it through reaching out, talking to folks, keeping that positive approach. Bill said it. The demand for our industrial products in this market has never been stronger. We're coming back. Don't underestimate where we're at. The negativity can be overwhelming at times, but there is some real strength out there. And if I was leaving anything off of this call with anybody, there's a lot of strength. There's a lot of good things. We see growth at Opus, and we see growth in this market. And I'm glad to hear our other folks on this phone are seeing it as well.
I think the only thing I'd add, and I love the comments all around, is that just the reminder that real estate's kind of a 2-year cycle when you incubate a project to when you open it, and COVID will pass. We'll have challenges. It'll be a bit like 9/11, I think, whereby the airports were never the same. But you know what? We all started traveling again, and the world opened back up, and we moved on, and we were probably better for it, even though it was a tragedy. I think real estate's similar to that, and there's a lot of talk about overreaction into wildly rethinking every building. To me, I think there are going to be a lot of smart adjustments. But we're going to come back, and our industry aligns pretty well to a 2-year virus.
Excellent. Well, this has been an incredible webinar. So thank you to each and every one of you for participating today. A lot of great comments and very kind words. Obviously, like Bill said and Matt said, we can't wait to see all of you guys once again in person. Whether it's at Golden Valley Country Club or somewhere else in town in the very, very near future. So for anybody that needs that real estate continuing ed today, please make sure you put your real estate license number and your name in the chat button. You can find today's webinar in addition to all of our other webinars on rejournals.com /videos. And we actually have 6 additional CE webinars coming up over the next few weeks or so. So if you are interested, go to rejournals.com /webinar. And actually you have until June 30th this year. The state of Minnesota, the Department of Commerce just told us this morning, you can actually take a course up until June 30th this year and you can still get those continuing education credits. And then we have 2 additional national webinars that we are hosting, one June 9th and one June 11th. Both of them can be found on rejournals.com. So once again, thank you for everyone for your time today. Thank you, panelists. Awesome event, awesome webinar. We can't thank you enough, and we look forward to seeing all of you in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.